you. Is this on? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming and taking a break from relaxing and enjoying yourselves here on the beautiful YouTube beach. Why don't we start with our lovely panelists introducing themselves, and then we'll get right in. Let's start.
From this way?
Yeah.
I'm Emad Tatu, Director of Applied Technology at Finch. I'm based out of Sydney, Australia, and I was also the jury president for Innovation Lines this year.
Hi, Richard Guest. I oversee Tribal Worldwide's offices in North America.
And Justin Graham, Chief Strategy Officer of M&C Saatchi across Asia.
Great. So my role at WPP involves mainly supporting and catalyzing innovation at the holding company level, at our agencies, and at our clients. And the main ways we do that at WPP is through acquisitions, through investments, and through partnership with companies like Google. And as I think about kind of other service industries like law or consulting or even finance, with some exceptions, I'd say agencies in particular are feeling the pressure to be innovative and to do innovation on behalf of clients, whatever that means, more so than those other services businesses. So my first question for the group is why you think agencies in particular are experiencing or feeling this disproportionate innovation pressure, and why now, why this moment in time in particular?
Well, I think a couple of things come to mind immediately. One, innovation is a big, smushy word that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and the industry tends to throw it around a lot, so everyone talks about it broadly. But two, with all of the wonderful creative agencies, smart media agencies, digital agencies in the world, it's becoming very hard to differentiate creative product in and of itself without this halo of innovation as we go out and try to win new business for ourselves. And third, in terms of attracting talent, innovation matters. Scott Galloway earlier this week at his talk in the Innovation Lions event said it is better to be a builder than a brander today. And I think we have great companies like Google and YouTube to thank for that perception.
Yeah, I disagree a little bit around it's more pressure on us. I think, you look at banking, you look at law. I mean, I think the legal industry is going to go through massive disruption in the next 12 months, far more than probably what we will see, I guess. I think we probably hold ourselves accountable and to a higher level of needing to take our clients to a new place. And so I think there's pressure that we put on ourselves, which is good pressure, by the way, to provide innovation. So I think it's actually a world of opportunity in many ways, because I think previously people looked at the advertising industries to solve problems through an advertising lens. And the opportunity for us now is to use our creative brains against business problems that may have gone to the consultants or may have gone to other tech partners. So I think it's actually a really interesting time for agencies in the space at the moment.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think as well, like when we're talking about communicating with the public, the word emotion gets thrown around quite a bit, and we're always trying to make that emotional connection. And what I'm seeing at least is that we're doing it less with shock and more with inspiration. And the thing about innovation is we're in this golden age where everything that's coming out has this magical glow to it, and it's amazing, and everyone wants to see the latest, newest thing and talk about it. And my mum, who knows nothing about computers or anything, will call me up and tell me about some amazing drone she's seen. Like everyone, the public's hungry for it, and they want to be amazed, and they want to be wowed, and they want to see that magic. So it's just natural that we're trying to give them as much of that as possible.
So I like the brander builder dichotomy. So what is it going to take for an agency to become a collection of builders versus branders? What needs to change, or what's stopping them from becoming that?
It's hard, one, but I think it's a complete mental shift. When you are oriented around storytelling, you only have to go so far in the process. You can conceive the story, then you can work with great production companies to help realize the story. When you truly become a builder and you create a culture of makers inside an agency, the process becomes much longer. the work can be much harder and the frustrations can be much greater. So it's a complete mental shift more than I think a talent shift.
So is there any role then left for communications, or is it all about product?
Oh, there's plenty. I mean, I'm not in an agency. Our company's in production, so we are the builders. So my answer to that is it'd be nice if the agency didn't become builders. That way I've still got a job. Yeah, I mean, we find all the time when we try and tackle something internally. So we'll help agencies build innovations for clients. We'll help clients redevelop their products, and quite often the amount of work that's gone into the strategy and the creative development well before it gets to us is outstanding. And we've seen that firsthand where that step gets skipped, and we might just start trying to do something internally and then put it out there and realize how incredibly difficult it is if you haven't done that strategy and you haven't identified your market and then built the creative around it, you're going to fail pretty hard. And what we're seeing though is that a creative team is exceptional at being a creative team, but to be a creative team and then also have engineering prowess and production and build knowledge and be on top of all the tech that's out there is pretty much impossible. I mean, there'd be a handful of people in the world who'd have that talent and ability to know everything. So it really is more about the collaboration, and it has to be done earlier, because if you build a creative concept and then go to a production company and go, hey, build this, there's a good chance that it's either too expensive, it'll take too long, or it's impossible. There'll be hurdles along the way. So it really has to happen earlier in the line, and that creative process is less about one team doing one thing and then sending it off to another team, and more about doing more like, sprints and scrums and doing it on a very agile platform.
Yeah, I think in some ways agencies are shooting themselves in the foot at the moment. I think it's been a theme through this whole week around just short-term syndrome. And I think some of the juries are awarding work that's very short-term, but actually the history of agencies is all around building long-term brand ideas over a sustained period as well. And I think actually that's what innovation's about as well. It's not just a one-hit wonder that just happens straight away. And I think that's a challenge. We did some work that was awarded here last year for our client Optus in collaboration with Google. It was called Clever Boy. And it just happened that's been a 4-year journey. It just happened to hit the award show, I guess, last year. There's still as much work going on it now than there was 2 years ago. And I think it's this short-term way that we look at these projects, but actually we need to think and partner with experts as well on a much longer-term basis.
So in the Optus example, what were the factors that allowed you to embark on a 4-year journey, given the sort of short-term mindset that permeates the industry generally?
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of mistakes made along the way. I think it was originally a commitment from the client to say that this isn't about a campaign that we need results on in the next quarter. It's going to be something that's going to drive our brand over a much longer period of time. And we probably didn't know what we were getting into at the start as well, and that's actually been the trust that's continued right through that. We didn't know it was going to be something that would take years of testing and through government protocols to actually get it up to market, and that's the phase that we're in at the moment, and that's really exciting, but that's challenging the way we think about innovation as well, and the type of skill sets that you need to actually drive that through an agency, because as Emad was saying, the challenge was you've got these great creative teams that are used to just sitting there on the process until it goes out to market, whereas actually they might go dark for 12 months while you're sitting there with a technology expert bringing it to market, and then you come back and there's a role to tell the story about what we've actually created at the end.
And I think the other skill set that changes is kind of long-term product management when we launch some of these innovations that are more in the product space. Agencies historically haven't had to manage products and versions and improvements year over year the way we have to now if we get into this innovation business.
Yeah. So from a talent standpoint, is that about bringing on different kinds of people? Is it about retraining existing people? What are the requirements in that regard to make those sorts of projects happen?
I think it's a bit of both, actually. I think there's absolute specialists that agencies haven't had before that need to be inside agencies now. It's interesting when you talk to people outside of the advertising industry that are in incubators or are in technology firms, what they are impressed with us, ironically, around advertising, is we know how to bring things to market very quickly. We know how to commercialize things. I guess that's been the background of getting. We have producers, we have brilliant business thinkers that can get stuff done very quickly. And in some ways, if you're in a pure innovation or science space, you can get trip up yourself. And so I think we've got some good skill sets, but we need a whole bunch more. And I think people that can actually manage products from a financial point of view and bring that to life is something that most agencies wouldn't have at the moment.
Anything to add, Richard?
For me, it's about broadening the pool of talent we recruit from. So yes, there's engineers, technologists, product managers that can come into the agency world, but also people from different creative fields that we don't necessarily think of as communication fields. I was talking to our strategy lead in Brazil, and she's been hiring a lot of chefs to come in and work on her strategy team because they tell stories just in a different way through food, and they know how to participate in the creative process in a way that a traditional agency strategist might not.
So, Emad, you chaired the innovation jury this year. Could you tell us a bit about what you saw, what you learned in terms of what makes successful innovation in the context of Cannes and agencies?
Sure. It's a big question.
Yeah.
But, this year we awarded more than any other year. We gave out 9 lines. I think last year they did 6. We had something about 75% increase on entries, most ever at 390. And the diversity of the work that won and was entered was amazing. I mean, we had product and software and social good versus big fuck-off experiential amazing tech. We had innovation that was about improving the industry and the advertising industry, stuff like Blackbird. So it was really great to see that mix. It makes it incredibly difficult to judge it or to chair a jury judging it because, how do you compare a social good campaign versus a electric car that's all about trying to sell more cars in an ad? If you try and judge work against each other, you're going to fail and have a lot of arguments. So we worked out pretty early that we can't judge work against each other. Instead, it's judged against itself. So we basically work out if this innovation has exploited every opportunity it had to develop it to the best of its ability. But just seeing how far the categories move from its first year to where it is now is phenomenal. And this year we saw a lot of machine learning, which was really nice. Obviously, we had AlphaGo. We also had the next Rembrandt that both picked up, AlphaGo getting the Grand Prix. What I find interesting is we seem to be fascinated by machine learning in a capacity where we get the machine to make something and then we just take the result, which is like the next Rembrandt. So, we got the machine to make Rembrandt, then we sent it to a 3D printer, which is beautiful. I don't think it would have been as successful if the computer made the image and then someone painted it. It takes something away, but I think that's where we'll move to. I reckon over the next couple of years we'll see more of that, much in the way a self-driving car actually helps you drive. It helps you do something as opposed to just sitting back. So I think we'll see more of that in the future as well.
And I think that's a great point about how the Cannes Festival has evolved this year. 10 years ago, this was very much an advertising festival. I think over the last 5 years, it's become a festival about creativity and advertising. This is the first year I felt this is a festival about creativity in all its forms and formats, whether it is coding or data or advertising or content and some of the great work that the New York Times won for, which is really just journalism. So it's great to see the festival evolve in that way.
Do you think the next evolution will be kind of not needing or not having a separate innovation category and it's sort of permeating everything? Or do you think there is something to innovation as this standalone point of entry?
I think innovation's going to be more about high tech, digital tech specific. Right now, it's really the category definition is more inclusive than exclusive. So we're like, well, it doesn't have to be pure high tech, so it can be an innovation on a product design, and then you take it back a step further, and it's like, well, it doesn't have to be an actual product. It can just be, a bit of code or a bit of software. Did
a TV commercial ever win an innovation line?
Well, no, because the argument is that innovation is part of every other category judging anyway, but innovation itself has a lot of entries that could not exist anywhere else. But now we are starting to see a lot of other categories, like data is a good example, right? So what's going to happen eventually, if the category of innovation gets segmented and divided, we'll see that we probably have the exact same category as we already have in data. So maybe that gets removed out, and maybe innovation does turn into more about product innovation specifically, but then I don't know what that's going to do to the product category. So I think for now it's going to stay in this, give me you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor kind of everything to begin with, until we start setting up some more subcategories, and that'll come once the entries increase, so probably within the next year or two.
I think the fascinating thing will be how the impact of what's being awarded at the moment in the innovation category starts impacting the other ones in the next few years. So what will film look like when they start using some of the products and technologies that have been talked about and awarded this year? I think I heard a great perspective from Sir John Hegarty this week, which is around, the theme has been here that technology is just running so fast, and actually arguably creativity is well behind. And throughout history, whether it be, and he used the example of, the invention of the electric guitar versus moving image, the people who invented it aren't actually the famous artists that use it. And I think there's a lot of creativity around here to go and have a proper run at what's coming out. And so I think I agree with Emad, where I think innovation will go deeper and deeper around what are the new tools to play with in our categories. And then the other categories will start to explore that, and you'll start to see what that looks like.
Justin, you hinted at this in the Optus example, but what is the role of the client in all of this? Because I think as the agency, we tend to put pressure on ourselves and get pressure put on us to be innovative and do innovative work. But it sounded like the client being brave and kind of thinking long term was a key component of your success in that case.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think no one knows what they're doing. So that's the first point. So we're all fumbling through together, which is actually great. And I think it's an old word, but collaboration is a powerful word within that as well. And I think there needs to be an openness from clients to run it with new models. So everyone talks about needing to have IP ownership, value-based ways of charging. I think what is very clear is that most advertising at the moment is charged out on a head-hour basis, and that's not going to work in the new world. And it's very easy for clients to do that because it's a line item on their balance sheet and they can manage that. Whereas actually if they're looking to build their business, you can come to advertising agencies to say, actually if we look at a new way of charging, that's going to drive their business as much as ours. So I think there's an openness not just around the type of work that's happening, it's the way that's worked, and it's how it's paid for.
How do we get to that place of a different model of charge?
We don't charge head hours, we're project based, and we keep all our IP. We find so often when we deal with clients that most of the time they're actually not even interested in owning the IP, they just want to stop anyone else from doing it. So that can be arranged pretty simply with an exclusive license for the duration of what they're trying to do. And I find selling your IP by default is horrible, because how do you build on your learnings? You end up, you get 3-4 projects deep and you're about to start integrating a piece of tech, and then you realize that you've just sold it to a client last year and you can't do it. So the more you do it, the less work you'll make, and the less good work you'll make is the short of it for me.
When you think about your own organizations, how do you measure success when it comes to innovation? Or how do you quantify, if at all, being innovative as an organization?
I'm going to say
you
something.
Just sort
You're
of
going to
sense
say something much smarter. I think, I think a qualitative measure would be if you're not changing as fast as what's happening outside your organisation, then you're dying. So you need to be looking at how you're changing internally. If there's great improvements happening outside, then you need to make sure you're running faster inside around that. Look, I think practically for us, it was around setting up another division to act as a disruptor within MNC Saatchi. So we set up, off the back of some work that we've done, we set up an innovation business called Tricky Jigsaw. And that was a new way of working with new skill sets, new ways of charging, and that was the disruptor for us internally to apply that to the rest of the business. And I think that works for some people. I've heard from Absolute this week, they were talking about their labs being very successful at disrupting the way they do marketing as well internally. So while labs have become a bit of a cliche already, I still think that they're a great way to at least jump into the space of disrupting yourself. And then from that point, its perspective, it's probably less around the financial impact coming out of that business and far more around the disruption on how you're driving your overall pieces of business around it.
Those are great points. I don't know if I can do better than that. I think the thing I would say is I go back to my original point. For us, it relates to how are we doing in terms of attracting new client and new talent to the agency as well as retaining talent. And that is perhaps a leading indicator of how well we're doing in innovation, because everyone we work with from the client side, everyone we try to hire from a talent perspective wants to be associated with an innovative company. I agree with you as well that the historical notion of labs in our industry is kind of a wasted technology showcase, but true working labs that can disrupt, that can bring new business models to bear are critical things for agencies to be investing in.
I'd probably measure it by how many talented people cold call me looking for a job. I think that's a really strong metric. That's generally an indication that at least 3 months in the past is your most innovative time when you see those numbers start increasing.
So how do we close that gap then between this desire that brands and organizations have to be innovative with sort of the easy way, which is just to fall back on what you know and the 30-second spot? How do we close that gap?
You just got to keep running at it, and I think it's highlighting work that's being awarded here and showing how it's building business. They are just awake at night trying to work out who the partner is for them that's going to take disruption or bring disruption into their business, because they don't know who to go to. And that's a great opportunity for our collective business here to just start showing what it can actually look like. I think, as I said at the start, I think it's using our big creative brains for business-shaped problems as opposed to advertising-shaped solutions. And I think if we truly do that, though, that's up to us to hold it, because I actually think that the door's open for us to go and take that space.
Yeah, I guess my challenge would be, I don't know of one advertising company in the world that is only focused on the 30-second spot. I think we're well past that. I think the question becomes, how can we really commercialize innovation in a way that's sustainable for our business models and beneficial to our clients? And that we haven't quite cracked the code on yet. Agencies in and of themselves aren't good at having separate P&Ls that are about long-term growth. And you certainly know this from WPP, trying to manage shareholder value, right? It's about immediate value as well as long-term value, and we haven't quite cracked the code on that long-term value piece.
Yeah, I think I've heard of big agencies around the world that have set clear targets around, by 2020, half their revenue needs to be non-time based. So if you go and set some targets like that, you may not get there, but actually at least you know where the organisation's running. And when you think about every project and think around every new piece of business that comes in and how you start that new relationship, it's starting it with a goal around that as opposed to what's gone on in the past.
Any questions from the audience? We have a couple of minutes. Yep.
The question that I have is, how do you, when you get close to the work and you're building something and you think it's innovative, what's your measure for how you assess, should I be working on this or not? Like, is this truly innovative when I'm building it? Because when you're very close to work, you always think anything that you're making is going to be great. But then when it comes out in market, everyone's like, why did you do that?
I built an algorithm for it, which is the trendy way to say that I wrote a few things down on a bit of paper and put a score against it. And my top tier is I've got 3 different boxes it can be in under worthiness, and it's is it entertaining, is it a useful tool, or will it do social good? And then I've got a score from 0 to 3, and then under that I've got a bunch of finance questions around, is the client, is there a real client, is there budget to do it, if it's an internal job, is there a business plan, is there budget to execute, and then under talent, how high is our capability internally to actually produce it? And if that isn't high enough, then how easily accessible is the talent to do it? And it's not perfect. It's not a perfect metric, but I instantly, when I run it back over previous jobs I've done and the work that I'm most proud of, you know, and it might be a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but a lot of it does hold up to a very high score. And the stuff that you look back and you go, why the fuck did I do anything to do with that? Quite often has a low score. There's like no budget. It's frivolous. You don't really know if it can even be done. And you waste weeks making something that, you know, serves no purpose. So sometimes you have to write it down on some paper and tick some boxes and put a number next to it just to re-emphasize what you might already know in your gut. But a lot of the time it is just gut, and that's how I quantify it most of the time.
I'm not that mathematical. I show it to my family or someone outside of the industry who I trust, because a lot of times we are talking to ourselves and what we think is really cool, the average human being in the world thinks is a complete and utter waste of time. So if you get that ooh and ah from someone who doesn't work in advertising or technology, that to me is usually a sign that you're onto something.
I think I'm a strategist by trade, so I probably over-index on the structure side of things. And what I say to the teams, if they're in that situation, is write the case study now on what would it look like at the end. So what would be that insight? What's the utility? What's it going to look like there? And if you start to struggle, it probably has no meaning for any humans in the world, and it's just a pleasure project that's fun and makes you look smart. And I think we get a lot of that from both sides. It's like, yeah, it'd be really cool, but actually no one gives a shit about it. As opposed to if you can actually go and write the case study on what it could do in the world, it's a pretty good sign you're onto something.
Yeah, I think across the board, though, the commonality would be the why. Like, if you don't have a really strong why of why you're doing it, and if the why deep down in your soul is to try and win a can line, then you should probably run. Like, that's never going to end very well.
Or schmooze Emad, because he's the chair.
I don't think I'd chair again. You don't get to chair twice, so the schmoozing's gone. Yeah, you have to have a really strong why for why you're doing it, beyond the, you know, making money or how you're going to do it or what it's going to look like.
Do we have time for one more question? Okay. Anyone? No? All right. Well, thank you to our panelists and everyone who came.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.